Welcome to this episode of How Do You Divine? And today we are here with Lester Young to talk about how he has come to define and redefine redemption. Lester, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to diving deeper into this definition or my understanding of what redemption looks like for me. So let's do it.
Yes, I think
Yes, I think
redemption
redemption
has such a
has such a
heavy
heavy
meaning in everyone's
meaning
life,
in everyone's life.
right? When we think of
When we
redemption, we
think of
always think
redemption, we
about
always think
the
about
pain and the
the
hurt that
pain,
came
hurt that
before we
came
needed to
before we
redeem
needed to
ourselves.
redeem ourselves.
But before we knew
But before
redemption,
we
we
knew
were just
redemption,
young
we were
people.
young people,
So
right?
tell me
So
about young
tell me about
Lester.
young Lester.
How was your life?
How
What
was
was
your life?
redemption?
What was redemption?
What was life
What
before
was
you
life
even
before
thought
you
about
even thought
redemption?
about redemption?
So I think I had a typical, maybe from the age of maybe 13 to 16, I had a typical teenage lifestyle, both parents, friends, playing football in the after school, loving activities, just loving life. From 13 to 14 years old. I mean, I was 16. So I never really thought about the word redemption. At that age, you're not even thinking about life and none of that stuff. You're
Yes.
just living and enjoying that moment of just being a kid, right? And having fun with your friends and didn't even care if the world was coming to an end as long as you was hanging with family and friends.
Yes, I love to hear it. So when do you feel like life made a shift?
Life made a shift for me at age of 16. 16 years old, when I go back and I think about my timeline in life to this day, I think about 16 years old was that period where my life shifted from happy-go-lucky to 16-year-old kid losing a mother, coming in, losing like one day, going to bed and waking up the next morning, your mother's dead, right? Didn't even anticipate, didn't give you signs that it's going to happen, wasn't nothing. So 16 years old was when my life completely changed. At that time, losing a mother and didn't understand how to process death, grief, emotions, pain, hurt, didn't know none of that stuff. It was hard. So that's what I would say when I look at my timeline. 16 years old was the beginning of me shifting my life. My life shifted.
Yeah, and that's so hard, especially when it happens so suddenly, right? It's like you wake up and you enter into a whole new reality.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that emotionally?
I did at 16. I didn't. I think I went numb. I think emotionally I went numb because I didn't have the tools at 16 years old to articulate my emotion, my hurt, my pain, my what everything I felt like losing a mother. It's undescribable losing a mother at a very young age. My mother at the time, she was like 32, 33 years old. I was young. My mother was a young person, so that to me
Mm.
was like hard to even like wrap my mind
Fathom.
around. You know what I'm saying? That you losing your mother and you're gonna grow up just with one parent now, and that's my father. And just looking back at my father, it was hard for him to process that loss as well. So, as a young teenage boy looking at his father to understand like how do I process that? My father didn't give me the emotional IQ that I needed to process because he didn't have the tools either. So he
Yeah.
shut down. So is that true saying men don't show emotions, men don't cry? And that's why I started internalizing that men don't cry because I never saw my father cry, even though it was the most devastating thing, losing his wife. And I didn't see him cry, and he never expressed what that felt like for me, for him,
Oh
and
my
how
God.
how
And to not, yeah, and to not show sorrow,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's just hard. And it also makes me think about the compassion that we have to have for the generations before us,
Mhm.
right? No one showed them the tools and what it means and how it's okay to be vulnerable, right?
I think for me, like now, I over the years, because of the tools that you said, looking at my father's timeline as well, my father didn't
Mhm.
have the tools that we have today. My father didn't hear this term emotional intelligence. My father didn't have this thing about self-regulation, emotion expressing. My father he only duplicated what was given to him. So we have to
Mhm.
look at it. When I started looking at it from that perspective, I started extending grace even more to my father, right?
Yes.
But, as a young person, I was like, "Damn, why couldn't you do this? Why you couldn't do that?" Assuming that he knew. But then when I sat down and started learning my dad's timeline, I realized that he grew up in an era where he didn't know his father and he experienced a lot of loss, and no one taught them how to express their emotions. And he inherited that belief again, that narrative that men don't cry, men don't show emotions. So when you hurt and you feeling pain, you numb it by drinking, hanging out, whatever that looks like. So that was their medication. Therapy was not a conversation my father understood. Counseling was not part of his vocabulary at that time. So I asked him, well, why didn't we go to counseling? What is counseling? Now, so
But we have to be so grateful for the times, right? And I say while we have our pros and cons about social media and the internet, one of the most powerful thing it has given us in a global scale is language,
agreed,
vocabulary.
agreed.
Because, in our small worlds where we grew up, where our parents grew up, it's easy to hold on to things like men don't cry. Children are to be seen and not heard. Like these terms are easily repeated and then received very differently for every single person. So then when we see the generations before hurting, they don't know how. They don't know how, right? It's like we at least have the language. And with the language, it allows us to explore.
Mhm,
Hey, that feels different. That feels like it will look good,
mhm,
right? So during this time, now in hindsight, right,
mhm,
you've been able to grant him grace. But during that time, your younger years around 16, when, your life changed significantly. I women and mothers are the heart of any home.
mhm.
They're the essence of every aura. So for that rip from you so abruptly, and Lester had to figure out how to move on.
Yeah.
Tell me, how did that chapter feel like?
I mean, because like you said, I didn't have the tools. So when you don't have the tools, the language, the example, the model, to emulate and learn from, you search immediately in your environments and you search for what you can best see. So I left my home, my house, and I started searching for what that looks like in my community, my immediate proximity. So in that, this is where I was exposed to gang culture, drug dealing, guns, etc. And that was looked like my peers. That is how we all found our way of coping with that particular pain that we all experienced. We were all experiencing different levels of emotions and hurt and these different things in our proximity. It gave us these images and things. So music became our narrative, the feed and justify and allow us to input and output what we felt. We felt angry, so we gravitated to the music and the lifestyle that allowed us to express that. It felt good in the moment, but that's how it was all we had at the time. So music became our narrative, became our counselor. And that music, unfortunately, the music I gravitated to, it was not anything about therapy. It was about revenge. It was about hitting back harder. It was about hustling. It was about drinking. It was about all of these various things. So that unfortunately became my counselor, my thing that painted on this blank canvas from 16 to 19 years old. I started painting how I felt through those particular vehicles or mediums.
Yeah, and also it's a great representation of community, right? I think a lot of young men gravitate to the streets because it's a family.
Yeah.
It's the love and it's the attention and the nurturing that sometimes are not at home.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. You find it in brotherhood or sisterhood, right? In my case, I found it in brotherhood. It was like no judgment. We're not going to judge you. We all are hurting. We all want better, but we again did not have the correct tools to navigate our community. So what better look like for us is through hustling. That became the better way. That's how we're going to navigate our hood, is that we gotta hustle in spite of all of the carnage that we will cause and the harm we will cause through drug dealing and banging and
Mm.
shooting. We're gonna cause these people to suffer so that we can navigate and be free. But realizing that now, when I look at it now, it's like, damn, we only operated off what we know. we knew at that time.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, our communities, I think that nowadays, some of our young people have a better experience, better examples in the black and brown communities of what success looks like, what entrepreneurship looks like, what does college look, all of these various vehicles that could pull you out of your community and take you into a completely different world that allow you to imagine and dream and live the life that your ancestors only dreamed about you dream living. Now you have an opportunity to do it because you have proper representation today versus like I came up in the 90s and the 80s. We our proper
Mhm.
representation was crack cocaine era and it's
Listen,
crazy.
I know, and what's crazy about that is you were served injustice until you became a part of injustice. Do you understand? And that's why it's good that you outline that timeline in that way because I don't think anyone wakes up and go, I want to be gangbang. I think I always say, show me a retired drug dealer. Show, right? But one who is still drug dealing, right? The
Yeah,
one that is still in the life, it's rare.
yeah, yeah.
Statistics ain't really hitting the way you think it's going to hit.
You don't
It's six of us on the corner. It's usually only two at the top that has been able to recoup and become a better person. I always say, look at Jay.
yeah. Yeah, that's an exception to the rule. That's the outlier.
Listen, but that's why it's great that you have this program and you've gone through these experiences because young men can see themselves in you, both the good and the bad, hardship and what can come from it.
Mhm,
Everyone makes mistakes, but redemption is who you are.
mhm.
It helps define who you are, not what you've done.
Yeah, agreed.
So tell me how we went from 16, we found brotherhood in a way that was comforting us, but felt you found yourself incarcerated.
Mm. Yeah, going back again to 16 years old, that timeline, because I was broken so bad from the loss of my mother. As this saying goes, hurt people hurt people. I was so hurt by that loss, didn't have the tools that again, being exposed to the street life. At 19 years old, I found myself being arrested for murder, shooting and killing someone, unfortunately, over a drug dispute. And I was sentenced to life in prison. And that I always tell when I look back at that timeline, I says a 30-second decision making caused another human being to lose his life, a family member grieving over the loss of their loved one, my immediate family grieving over me making such a poor choice that now I'm going to be sentenced to life in prison. So I ended up serving a total of 22 years and 5 months before the South Carolina Parole Board saw fit to grant me parole after 22 years. But in that time, this is when the that stage of redemption and searching. That's why my organization is called Path to Redemption, because sitting in prison for life in prison. And now the walls are closed. I mean, like, there's no more partying, there's no more hanging out, there's no more doing this shopping, going to the mall. It
No
was
more distraction.
none of that. It was just me and my thoughts, my homeboys. Some of us were here, some of us wasn't, some of us were, but sitting in that small prison cell day by day, it started hitting me harder and harder that, yo, you need to find redemption fast because if you don't find redemption in this prison cell, you're gonna die in prison. You're gonna die in prison as an old man. Because of these choices. So that's when I began doing a lot of internal work to try to figure out how do I find redemption. And redemption was about me making peace with my past pain, making peace with the loss of my mother, seeking forgiveness from the person I unalive due to a poor decision making. And in that, that's when I came up and understood that everyone inside of prison, particularly myself at the time, I needed redemption in order to be alive again, find life. And I'm not talking about the life that I had prior to, but find a life that represented peace, represented self-compassion, represented empathy, represented someone that can now be a model to other individuals.
Well, that is hard, right?
Yeah, it is.
Just imagine the phases and the mental and emotional state that you had to go through to understand that.
Yeah.
Talk me through accountability through redemption, right?
Accountability.
When you sitting in that small cell, accountability is real.
Yeah, it is. And, and I tell people that for my first 3 years, I didn't understand vocabulary wise, accountability was not in my vocabulary. Like ownership was
Mhm.
not in my vocabulary. Victimization was in my vocabulary. I saw myself as a complete victim. And it was easier for me to do. And one of the reasons why I chose the victimization mindset while in prison, even in our community, because it removed me of responsibility and accountability. Right. So it was easy for me to blame everyone. And then on top of this, another part of this coping, it almost became a coping skill for me. When I
Yep.
started blaming other people, it allowed me to cope for a period of time. So being in prison for murder, I could not look in the mirror every day and realize that these hands sold drugs. These hands, unfortunately, pulled the trigger and killed someone. So I couldn't deal with that. So I was trying to do whatever I could to erase that.
Rationalize.
Nah, I wasn't
Okay.
even trying. I was trying to erase that experience. Sis. Like I didn't want it to.
Wow.
I wanted to erase it, not anything other than erase it. So victimization allowed me to subject and say, "Hey, this is what they said I did," et cetera, almost in a third person, and that allowed me to, for years, to navigate guilt and remorse and sorrow and unforgiveness and all. It allowed me to like function a little differently, but then it only served its purpose for a period of time. I could no longer use that victimization card for the remainder of my incarceration. It wouldn't have got me here where I'm sitting talking to you now. So I hit that wall, and that's when I learned the power of not victimization, but self accountability, self ownership. So, all of these various things that I needed to implement in my life in order for me to really walk out my path to redemption.
That's real. But why do you think victimization is the easy door to open when
Because
it
it's
comes to Black and brown youth?
Because it's like I don't have to take ownership. I don't have There's no accountability. I could blame someone else for my actions. And it's like, okay, I'm justified. For me, I felt justified, and this is crazy. My first couple of years in prison, I felt justified for what I did. Like, like, yo, you came to rob me for some crack and you died. You know what I'm saying? But when I looked at it, did that person really deserve to die over less than $250 worth of crack cocaine? Right? They didn't really deserve to die for that, right? So that's when I started acknowledging the carnage and the harm that I caused. And I was like, man, I got to take some responsibility for this. I did play a role in this. I made a choice. We say that black people don't bring cocaine into this country, but I still made the choice to go buy the drugs. I still made the choice to get the gun. I still made the choice to pull the clip out, put bullets in my gun every day. I made the choice. So once I started acknowledging that part, that's when redemption started to become a little more clearer to me. It's easy for me, and most of us do it. I'm raised in the
Yeah,
hood. My mom and dad is no longer here. I gotta get it out of the mud. But at the end of the day, like, what role do you play in the harm that you cause in your own life? Like, you have that choice, man. You have a choice to like decide to live or die, to sell dope or die in prison. You have a choice at the end of the day.
you do. I have this working theory
Mhm.
that hurt young men, Black men, choose victimization, like they're the victim of these hardships that they keep finding themselves in because they were never allowed to have Black boy joy.
Oh, agree. Fully agree. Fully agree with you, sis. Because like when I go inside of juvenile facilities across the country, and we sit down and we have conversation with young black boys, and allow them to be not GD, not Crip, not blood, not nothing. Like, yo, just you 13, 14 years old, and you've been carrying the weight of an adult in the community. And now you're in this juvenile facility away. Some of you may have some of your homeboys there, but you allowed to laugh. You allowed to have fun. You're not worrying about your ops. You're not worrying about that's true black boy joy that we miss. And it's crazy how they gotta go in that environment and feel it and see it. Like I think about a
To know
story,
it exists, it breaks
and
my heart.
it's
It
sad.
breaks my heart. It's a horrible cycle, and I feel like everyone in the community plays a part in that.
Facts. Yeah. We have
The
to create
mothers
that.
that's like, "You the man of the house," when he's 6, No.
Mm-mm.
Like, the people on your neighbors that are like, "Hey, you the boy, come on over here and help me do it." It's like, we have to stop
Mhm,
diminishing young Black boys' ability to be joyful and
mhm.
happy,
Yeah, yeah,
because later in their life, victimization is all they'll know, because they'll still be sitting on the inside going, "Look at all these happy people."
mm,
They can just laugh, they can sit back, they don't have no worries in the world. But they already have that system in their mind that you gotta watch out for the ops. Everybody coming for you. You ain't got no money? Oh, you whack. You ain't wearing the chains. You ain't in that Gucci. You ain't that
mm,
Gucci.
mm.
You whack. So you already gave them this mentality that you gotta get it any way necessary in order to be of value. Things really
Yeah, that's real, sis. That's a real thing, and it's unfortunate. It's real. And then this, when we look at it, just because of that, we deny our young Black boys that opportunity. We see the juvenile facilities filled with brokenness, right? I think about when I go inside these facilities, I see these young boys like they're sitting there, they're broken, they're realizing that damn, a choice I made now will cause me. I'm 14 years old now. When I turn 17, I'm going to an adult prison and I will be serving 35 years of my life in prison. Never had the opportunity to date, never had an opportunity to go to the beach, never had the opportunity to live life. I asked them. I remember one day I was like, "Man, when was the last time you ever went to a beach?" And it was like, "I never went to a beach." And I was like, "Man, when's the last time you had a girlfriend? Like, do you have a girlfriend?" I never had a girlfriend because of the environment. This young person was forced to grow up fast but broken and deprived. And I'm gonna share this story with you. I went in a prison cell one day, and this young Black boy, he was in there, and he had like he made wallpaper out of newspaper. He was putting it on the walls, and he was so excited to invite me to come into his room. I'm like, bruh, I was like, bruh, I done been in these prison cells for 22 years. Don't want to go like, like what you want to show me so exciting about your cell, bro? Like what? Like what do you want to show me? You got an old woman in this room or something? Like tell me. So I went into this room and he had taken a newspaper and made wallpaper, and it was dope. He had this artistic skill set, and I was like,
these
bro,
um
I was like, "What's up with you?" I was like, he was like, "Man," I said, I asked him, I said, "Why you so effing happy about this sale, bro? Like, you need to be thinking about it." He's like, "Big bro, I get it." But he said, "Man, you got to understand my story. I never slept in my own room ever in my life. I never had my own bed." He said, "Man, ever since I was a young kid, I was in foster care. I came in the house and my mother was having sex with a drug dealer, and I shot him thinking that he was harming her." He said, "Man, I never had a life." He said, "This cell to me is peace and freedom. This is my house." And I stepped back for a minute and I realized, I'm like, damn, he's right. But how many young people we assume come from good homes? This young man never had a place that he called his own. He said he never had a bed that he could sleep by himself, even though it was in prison.
he still was happy
He
enough to
still
come and tell
found
me.
something to say, "Hey, I know I'm gonna be here for a long time for the crime that I committed, but big bro, I got a bed. This is my room." And that's when you talk about black joy. Like, why do our young people have to go to a prison to feel some sense of normalcy by creating an environment and thinking? I was like, man, damn, this young brother will never see a beach. He would never walk on a beach other than what he has created on the wallpaper of a beach. He would never be a father, be able to live and get married or live his life ever again, unless he gets his case overturned, because he was facing almost 40 some he has 40 years, and he have to do almost 38 years of his
Man,
life in prison. But from 12.
deportation he took as a toddler.
Yeah, so, like, you talking about a crime that he committed at from 12 years old. This man was exposed to foster care, Department of Juvenile Justice to adult prison for 40 years now. That's the harm. That's the harm. You know what I mean? So,
Well, the systems that are in place to,
yeah,
again, continue to oppress and just rip the souls out of human beings are disgusting.
yeah, agreed, agreed.
It's just disgusting, and it's so unfortunate,
Mm,
it because I think when we have this conversation about the young people, worlds, how we can help them make different decisions and outside of prison before they get there. I also think about the adults that didn't get that opportunity.
Yeah, that's
The
true.
grown men and women walking amongst us who still have that hurt and that sense of victim. I'm the victim here. I didn't get a fair shot. I went from foster care to foster care, and then I was kicked out on the street. I had to do whatever to make something, and I'm here.
Yeah,
Nobody's looking and checking for me.
yeah, that's
How do they find redemption?
I think, this is where I believe that we as a community, as a nation, have to create more healing environments. We have to be more intentional about what trauma informed care looks like in schools, in our communities, in our worship services, whether church, at the masjid, temples, whatever it may be. I think we have to create more restorative circles, more trauma informed circles to begin this healing process because we're carrying these age-old baggage of trauma from our experiences and passing from generation to generation, in a collective sense. So I believe that we have to do better with that. Like we're looking at our public school system today, where we are spending a lot of money when it comes down to resource officers, where we have officers with guns and mace and handcuffs and walkie-talkies in there.
Which is
Yeah,
crazy,
and you're looking at
wild.
where does restorative circles come in? Where's the trauma informed social work or people with lived experience now working in these spaces to help our young people heal, right? As well as of some of our adults. So I think that we have to look at it from a therapeutic lens when we're talking about rehabilitation, even in the correctional settings. You have prisons, 2.3 million people in our country that are incarcerated. Over 700 million people have been impacted by a criminal legal system. You finding young children, almost 60 to 70 million, according to some studies, where they are children of fathers and mothers that have been incarcerated. And then we look at the data when young
Yeah,
people who
children.
yeah,
Mhm.
when young people who lose their parents to incarceration, what is the trajectory of their life, and the absence of their parents? So that leads to they may live a life of poverty, crime, and may meet their parents inside of a correctional environment at some point, right? So we have to, realistically, we got to look at it from a healing perspective. And I think that we could do a better job, rather in the Muslim community, the Christian community, whatever religious community you're tied to. I don't think that we need to continue to create this spiritual belief system. Hey, you just worship God, and then when you die, you go to heaven. But we need to be thinking about how we use our religious teachings to bring about some form of healing from all of the pain in our community. Men who are attending these services, you find less and less men attending religious services, because again they don't see the value in it, because the person who's preaching isn't speaking from a place of healing. It's speaking in a way that
Yeah.
they don't understand it. So that's like I remember
It's
me.
a place of judgment, and I can
Yeah,
be honest about that.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes from a place of judgment rather than compassion, right?
yeah,
And I feel the same way about the protocols that are being placed into schools.
yeah.
To me, I immediately see a sense of controlling humans rather than offering them compassion,
Mhm,
consultation, and to help remediate what issue that's, let's just say, creating disruptive behavior.
mhm. Yeah, we need.
Instead of you sitting down with them and figuring out how we can help you empower yourself to be the best version of yourself. No one wakes up every day and it's like, I'm gonna burn this down. I'm so angry.
Now they deal with it in different ways, and this is going back again to the question about redemption. So redemption for me again looks like, using my lived experience of incarceration to help others find that sense of peace and healing, as they move forward, right? Because if we don't have healing, and that's what redemption looks like to me now, it's about healing from past pain, the brokenness, the loss. That's what it's about: accountability, ownership, becoming a credible messenger, some that it will help empower others to show them that redemption is possible. You don't have to like stay broken, stay down, because of the past things that you have done, and particularly those who have participated in gun violence. I think it's important that we need to help our young men who are participating in gun violence and unfortunately have unalived someone, have harmed someone for life. We have to help them begin the process of healing, because there's a thing that happens to us for those who have committed these violent crimes. there's going to be a period where that person is going to hit a wall, or it's going to come to that fork in the road where they're going to have a choice to either heal or not. And because of our environments, we don't speak about healing enough, and we don't have real conversations about the after effect after pulling the trigger. There's an after effect
Mm,
after pulling the trigger, right?
eesh.
And that after effect is again the guilt, the conscience, the haunting. People don't want to acknowledge
Yeah.
there's a haunting that comes with that over a period of time. That shit weighs in your mind, right? So how do we again help our young people begin that process? Because if we don't, it's gonna that guilt is gonna implode into anger. Anger is gonna kill that, is gonna suffocate that innocent person. That young person is gonna suffocate them to a point where they become even more callous, that they don't, you know what I'm saying? So we have to look at it from that lens.
This just reminds me of people hurting people.
Oh, absolutely. When you break it down,
Oh,
absolutely.
oh my gosh, of someone that is just so deeply hurt and hurting and just crying out for someone to extend some sense of compassion and visibility, right? I think everybody wants to be seen and understood.
Yeah. It's just when you look at it, right, like, for I'm telling you the lifestyle I lived, right? When I see it today, what kind of hurt you in, state of mind of hurt you in to unload a whole clip on someone and just try to spray the entire block. Like, that's a that's different. That's you only people who
Yeah.
lived it understand it. Like,
Damn,
so I
listen,
know what you have to get into a certain frame of mind to say, you know what? You my ops, and I'm coming after you, even with your kid. I'm letting you feel this rage,
and I
right?
feel like a lot of that is someone who was raised in Brooklyn. A lot of that stems from their own fear.
Yeah, it's a fear comes with it, that hurt comes with it. It's a trauma, especially listen, if I've been already shot or one of my homies been shot, that's traumatizing. So if I've experienced it, the chances are if I didn't have a gun before, I will get a gun. And the saying is, I will get you before you get me. Right. So we don't create, that's going back again to this point that I made. We have to create more trauma informed community care, especially when we find a young person who have been impacted by gun violence. We have to find a way to connect with that person who lost a loved one to gun violence. His homeboy, like, our young people would, like, back then they would ride until the
It was
world comes
wild,
to an
wild, it
end
was wild, wild west.
for my homie. Like, my dad, if I say something about a person's dead homie, that
They ready
immediate
to take your head off.
yo, I see it every day. I see it every day.
They ready
Like,
to take your head off
mom,
because the love that's within that brotherhood is unmatched.
but we break that
So they
down.
ready to take your head off.
But if we break it down, it's the love of the brotherhood. But then there's a lot of psychology and connection. When I look at that, it's a love there. It's real, man. And that's the thing that is, but it shows so much hurt. Like, I'm hurt. I need counseling. I need to process the loss of someone I call my brother, my twin. I don't know how to deal with that other than hit back. Trauma informed care needs to be taught more in schools.
No, so how have you
Mhm.
established these coping mechanisms?
How did I?
You're behind bars. You've had a rough upbringing.
Mhm.
You found redemption and you found the light in the midst of all of this darkness.
Yeah.
Give me a coping mechanism. How do we help them see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel?
I think
So that
mine.
they can start to be open to trauma healing opportunities.
I think. I
Because you
think.
first have to be open.
Yeah, I think it's gonna come from your homies. It's gonna come from your big homie who's credible, who has begun that process of healing through reading and educating. Right? It's not something you can just look in the mirror and say, I'm gonna turn that switch on. And for me, what helped me is my big homie, right? Is somebody that I looked up to in the drug game. I remember I walked into prison, I was like, damn, big homie. I was like, damn, he was in there like 3 years. And I was like, bro, I had this, I had that, I had this. I said, man, I even bought your car. Like, your car, because it was a status that everybody wanted. I said, I bought your car, and that joint just was sitting. I bought it just because I surpassed you." And he's like, "Yo, that's good, big homie. That shit don't mean nothing no more." And I was like, "What?" Like, I was like, "Man, I got this. I'm about to bring this in. How tell me who I can get this pack in." He's like, "I don't rock like that no more." I was like, "What? You ain't trying to hustle in here?" Like, nah. He's like, "Man, I'm gonna get you this book, and you're gonna read this book, and you're gonna sit your little ass down, and you're gonna start getting your mind right because you got a life sentence, and you may die in prison if you don't get it right." And in that moment, he started holding me accountable. Like big homie was like, "Nah, you ain't selling dope." I remember I remember like having that stuff and he coming in and grabbing it all and like grabbing it and flushed it down the toilet in the joint. Like you talking about thousands of dollars of contraband. He was like, "Nah, bro, like, nah, this is done. You done with that." So what I mean is sharing that some of the big homies who have done transformed their lives and went through this process of healing, they have to find ways to start giving back to the little homies, right? Because they're the only ones that can connect with them. And no one else in prison could connect with me other than my homie.
You know, seems like a very limited avenue for them.
And I think if
It's a
you
limited
do
avenue to redemption because what if they don't have a big homie that
well,
has made the transition to evolve their mind?
I think we have enough credible messengers now. We have enough of brothers who have done been in that lifestyle that are now written books that are creating programs and now doing training. I believe it's enough of us out here now. And again, because of social media, we have better connection, better information to give
More reach.
individuals this app. Yeah, more reach. And I think it's and I said this too, like I tell the prison and the social workers in the schools, like y'all gotta move out of the way. This is a surgical problem that only people with that lived experience can speak to the depths of our young people. Like you getting paid 60, 70, $80,000 as a social worker, and you cannot connect with this young person. You doing this, you're a probation officer, you're not doing anything. You're a community leader and you're not doing anything, but you got someone who done got out of prison, built their life over living decent, and got some skills that can help. You're still judging them based upon their criminal record and not seeing their level of expertise from their lived experience to connect, to train, and educate you to be able to better connect. So we can create a larger network of credible messengers if people stop understanding the power of redemption. Redemption also meaning that you forgive and move on. Like our society needs to understand that redemption, meaning that I should never be continuously tied to the mistakes that I made when I was a young person. I'm out in the world now. We have people who have been there that we're excluding their voices to put some person with a PhD or doctorate. And I'm not discrediting that, but
Yeah.
my lived experience has value and you should tap into that and be able to create these different avenues to be able to guide our young people out of these maze of confusion and victimization and hurt and pain. We can collaborate together versus competing.
But how do you become a valuable ally to support human beings through this transition? From a numbers perspective,
Mhm.
there isn't enough people with your lived experience that
Yeah,
has made that transition and have redeemed to save not just the
create.
children and the younger people, but the people who have also transitioned and now walking these streets.
Yeah, it's
Right, just rightfully so. A lot of these people with credentials, social workers, doctors, PhDs, they come with their own reservations of human beings, right? We're all like fearful. We're like, whoa, wait a minute now. I don't want you to snap and come at me. Whoa, put your hands down. I want your hands on the table at all times. Like, let's keep it. Like, you gotta be honest.
Yeah, I mean that's just the bias. That's just the bias and prejudice that, like you say, human beings are going to deal with it, right? But I believe that we
Exactly.
need to like really be intentional about creating a blueprint for the next couple of years, next 5 to 10 years, 20 years, and how we're going to begin to tackle this epidemic, this harm that is happening to our community. And I believe it starts with a coalition of people using our allies, people with lived experience and non-lived experience, to learn from one another to create an agenda of some sort to begin this process of helping our community heal one block at a time. We got to start creating this model. We don't have a model that represents healing inside of prison, outside of prison, and community. if they are, they're tucked off in certain ways that we don't even see them,
They're
right?
in very little compartment.
Yeah, so I just think that we need to expand at what has been working in these little departments. We need to stop bringing it out and begin to scale it in different ways, right? And then you find it people like myself who is passionate but don't have all of the skills and how to scale what they're doing in community. We need to learn that. That's why I said these allies and coalition. We need to bring people from different skill sets so that we can learn how to scale what is working in mom and pops communities, right? We need to figure that part out too. But I think,
Yeah, because it needs honestly, it needs a solid framework.
yeah, yeah. I was
It needs a
thinking,
solid framework, and also, how does an ally support without enabling,
agreed, agreed.
right? Because I think in our community, that's always the concern,
Yeah,
right? Everyone wants to see everyone come through trauma whole and well, like truly making space to be well.
yeah.
So how do you do that?
And I was just thinking before we wrap this up, I was just thinking like you're familiar with like the Rwanda Hutus and the Tutsis war in Rwanda, right?
Hmm.
Are you
Hmm.
familiar with the what's the South Africa, the apartheid in South Africa, right? And you
Yep.
see some of this. But when I study the Hutus and the Tutsis, the Rwanda genocide, that millions of people died in this process. There was two rival tribes that was, came rivals, end up fighting, killing
Hmm.
people. But now you look at Rwanda today, 30, 40, 30, about 30 years later, you look at where Rwanda is at now and how these two tribes now coexisting. This is a model. I think that when we go and look at other nations instead of like constantly looking in our community, we got to look outside of our community on a global
All the time.
scale and
I
figure out.
advocate for a little. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was saying that I advocate that we should be watching global news on a regular
Yeah.
basis.
Yeah, I think it's something there to study that model, right? It's just something to study how these two tribes of people now coexisted. And studies showing that you go to Rwanda right now, you would never know that Rwanda had suffered such a horrific civil war, right? It is
Mhm.
it's like it's in the history book, but when you look at the land today, you don't see it. So we look at now in our community, we see these rival things taking place and we're still addressing it from a local level. And as I said, I think we need to be global and find what models work on a global level and then bring it down to to a lower micro local
Micro.
level to take some of the principles out and begin to build an infrastructure. Same thing with apartheid. They specialize in that restorative justice conversation. We see that now people from around the world in workplaces in corporate America, from the local community centers, they're now creating a restorative justice circles to help people begin this healing process. So what I'm sharing is that when we zoom out of what's going on in our block and do it from the lens of a global, we have models that we can begin to duplicate and make it applicable to our community. But many of us are not looking at it from a global perspective. We're so infixed with the hyper local situations that we don't see that sometimes the remedy is not in the hyper local, but it's in the global perspective and studying these various nations and how they was able to merge together and to be able to bring about something. And I say this in closing. You think about like Tukey Williams, one of the founders of the Crip Nation, when he started coming up with what's that with the gang peace summits, right? Where he studied nations and how they did this apart was peace treaties. When he looked at Israel and Palestine and how they would come together and do these peace treaties, Tukey Williams inside of a prison cell was like, hey, the Crips and the Bloods, we need a peace treaty. So he began to study from a global perspective and then he zoomed into his community and created a peace treaty. And this peace treaty outlined what the Crips wanted, what the Bloods wanted, and how we can coexist in this community. So we see this term peace treaty was adopted from the Israel and the Palestinian war that was happening for
Mhm.
centuries, just like what's happening in California and other parts of our communities. We got gangs that
Yeah.
have been fighting for the last 30, 40 years, but no one is looking at it from that global perspective. So that's what I just want to share that with you.
No, that is remarkable. I think the your journey
Mhm.
of defining and reorchestrating what redemption is, not only for you, but for your family, for your community,
Mhm.
to the children you mentor today, is so inspiring. Before I let you go,
Mhm.
I want you to leave the audience with a sense of how redemption
Mhm.
is a privilege.
It's a privilege.
It is.
Find freedom in
Be-
that.
exactly.
I got it.
I say it's a privilege, right? Because if we look at going back at the global perspective of human beings, right? There are people that lose their job and they're like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm gonna go on. You're gonna get another job. That's how you're gonna go on. There are people who have lost important people in their life and are going through grief years after years, trying to find how they redeem a portion of themselves they feel like they lost with that person. And while I think redemption is a privilege because we're still breathing.
Mm. Agreed. Got it. Got it.
And once we reshape how we see redemption, I think I think more and more people will feel like I can achieve it.
Yeah.
Who I was yesterday, who I am even today. It matters only to a certain extent because through redemption, I can be a version of
Yeah.
myself that I want to be.
Yeah. I would say that for me, just coming back from a conference I attended in Arizona, a speakers conference, and I heard this man mention that our words as speakers is the medicine to someone who's hurting, right? So, like this podcast that we're having now, that it will become a medicine to someone who's hurting. And so when I think about redemption, redemption represents to me today not just freedom and privilege, but it represents the medicine to a soul that needs to be healed. Like
Amen.
it's the thing that heals you. You no longer drink from the bottle of poison, expecting the person that you hate and hurt you to die, and you're dying inside. Redemption is saying, I am healing, and I'm using my experience to help another person heal. So when I heard that over the weekend, I thought about that. I'm like, yo, that is pretty dope because that's what we do as speakers and trainers and those who have went through the furnace. Now, my words that will be heard through your podcast and your audience, they would get a little portion of medicine to begin the healing process for their soul that is yearning for their peace, their privilege, their everything through redemption is through the words that you and I shared in this last 40 almost 50 minutes will
Yes,
become
and this is
medicine.
so amazing. And it also helps people see their bias,
Mhm. Agreed. Agreed.
right? How sometimes we see people for their circumstances and what they've gone through, but not who they are. And I think this conversation has definitely kicked that door wide on the
Let's kick that. I came in the door.
waving hands, not the fork.
No, we ain't waiting for both, but we waving our hand and say, hey, redemption looks like this. It is the medicine that begins the process of healing for you so that you can continue to be better, that you don't allow your hate, your unforgiveness to eat you alive. And it allows you to begin that process of healing and healing others in our community. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Lester. This has been an amazing conversation.
Cool, cool.
And this is, go ahead, Lester.
No, I said I'm good. I appreciate it. My soul's at peace. I've been fed throughout conversation. My heart is full, my spirit is full, and hopefully your audience feels the same way when they get a chance to hear this podcast.
Thank you so much, Lester. And this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence. And this is How Do You Divine Redemption?